further at risk.
That's right. That House-backed bill that passed in the House of Representatives, according to the New York Times, would add $8 billion to the defense budget, so it would actually make it bigger. So joining us now, Congressman Randy Forbes. He's a Republican. He is also concerned about what cuts in defense spending will mean to our national security and our economy. The Congressman is embarking on a 20-state tour to prevent defense cuts. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be with you this morning.
What are you planning to tell people?
Well, Carol, just the facts, and that is in just a few months, we're going to have about $1 trillion of cuts to national defense. If you ask the Air Force, they will tell you that puts them on the ragged edge. That's their words. Ask the Navy, we'll have fewer ships than we've had in 100 years. We'll be giving 150 to 200,000 pink slips to active men and women in the military today. And according to the Secretary of Defense, we'll cost 1.5 million jobs across the country. But the biggest concern, Carol, is we're moving dangerously close to a point where we'll no longer be able to guarantee the security of the United States or U.S. interest. And I think that's something the American people don't want us to do.
Isn't it Congress's fault for putting us in this position?
Well, I don't think so, Carol. I think, first of all, I didn't vote for the sequestration bill. But the second thing is, most people in Washington realize the reason we've got here is if you look at the stimulus bill that was $825 billion and the $347 billion of interest that came from that, that's an exact overlay of what we're taking out of defense. What essentially happened was the administration spent all this money in 1 year on a failed stimulus plan. Now they're taking it out of defense over the next 10 years. We don't think it's right to balance that on the back of our men and women in uniform or on our veterans or even on the taxpayers of the United States.
Well, actually, that was the deal. I mean, that was the debt ceiling deal, right? I mean, if Congress didn't find a way to find these cuts, then these things were going to happen not only to the defense budget, but to cuts in social programs and the like.
Well, Carol, remember, the president started these cuts. He started with $100 billion of cuts, which he said he was going to reprogram.
Yeah, but that's not where we are now. So let's concentrate on where we are now, because I think Democrats don't want that much cut from defense either. So then you have to find a solution. So House Republicans push through this bill, and it's the same old, same old. You know, you offer cuts to social programs like Medicaid, knowing that Democrats will never sign on to this bill. And knowing that that's no way to... why not sit down and negotiate and come up with a solid plan?
And, Carol, you know, that would be great. In fact, one of the things, you know, in Washington today, when you just reduce the level of increases in spending, people call them cuts. But the second thing is recognize at least the House has come up with a plan and sent it over to the Senate. The Senate hasn't come up with a budget in years, as you know, over 1,000 days.
Yeah, but Congressman,
you can't negotiate.
According to the New York Times, the budget that the House passed would actually add $8 billion in monies to the Defense Department. It wouldn't cut any military spending at all.
Carol, we're looking at capacity reductions. It doesn't matter about the number of terms. You have to ask the American people if they really want a situation where the Chinese will outnumber us 2-to-1 in subs in just 8 years. Do you really want a situation where we lose 1.5 million jobs across the country? Do you want a situation where we lose 150,000, 200,000 people in the military, which would be the equivalent of doing away with the entire Marine Corps in one fell swoop?
Well,
and I don't think they do, Carol.
I will say this. There was this survey that was recently conducted in part by the Center for Public Integrity. It shows that 90% of Democrats and 67% of Republicans want less spending at the Pentagon. So are they wrong?
Well, there's two different things, Carol. What we're talking about is, do they really want a reduction in capacity? I think when they hear the president and many people over in the Senate talking about the fact that they can have some of these cuts but still maintain the security of the United States, I think any of us would want those reductions. But I think when you ask the American people, do they really want to reduce the security of the United States of America, I think that answer comes back they don't. They want to make sure that we're maintaining and guaranteeing that security. And if the Senate's serious about this, let them pass a budget so we can do just what you said. Sit down at a conference table and try to negotiate some sort of agreement. But if they don't pass a budget, you never get to that table.
Congressman Forbes, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Carol. Have a great day.
You too. New details of the al-Qaeda plot to bring down a U.S. plane.